Fender and Squier. Where's the value? Have Squiers redeemed themselves in the budget guitar market? My name is Richard,
Yeah, Briscoe.
and today we're bringing you some good stuff, some good debate topic about Fender and Squier and what competitiveness they have within each other, especially in light of recent developments within Fender. And what would that be, Briscoe?
Well, basically, we have the new Fender Standard Series now, right? And you've heard about that. That's the one that's being made out of Indonesia now. Where before, your low-end Fender Stratocaster Standards, actual Fenders, were coming out of
Mexico.
Mexico. Yep.
That's right. And that's exactly what these are. That's not entirely true. These are the Powerhouse from, 2004?
I bought these in 2004 when I was working at Guitar Center.
I wasn't even alive. So, yes, these are not quite standard. Just the Powerhouse Deluxe. And, well, Briscoe has some points to make about them on why these are and were, at the time, excellent guitars.
Absolutely. And the thing is, back when I worked at Guitar Center and I was eyeing these up, and they had actually been producing them for quite a couple years prior to my purchase in 2004. Buzz was that the woods on these were cut in California and then were sent down to Mexico for the rest of the finished work and the hardware installation and assembly. So you can definitely feel the quality in the wood with these guitars. And like I said, I used to work at Guitar Center, so I've played a gazillion different types of Strats, everything from standards to their upper levels back then, which is long before the Player Series and the Ultra Series or whatever else is series they have out now, because I don't work for Guitar Center. But these very much, you could tell the fit and finish on these were a cut above the Mexican standard of that time in 2004.
And from what I've seen, I wasn't in there at the time, but I would tend to agree.
Because you've seen quite a few Strats in our ventures to Guitar Center and stuff like that.
I walk into guitar centers here in the Pacific Northwest, and I look at the Fender American standards and even some of the Mexican level, and I'm disappointed by what I see. There's a lack of care I see put into them. I look at how they're set up. I see how they play. I see that there's a lot of stuff that would be missing from a guitar at that price range.
And, I actually started out on a 1984 American Standard Strat, and the 80s Strats were considered some of their worst produced Strats ever. And that one had a 2-point trem system on it. And then I also had a 94 Mexican Standard Strat. That one needed all kinds of work on it after I bought it. I bought it for $350, and I remember I played on it with the stock nut and tuning keys and pickups for probably about a year or a year and a half, and it just never compared to what is considered not great years of Fender, but that 84 Strat played so much better than the 94 Standard Strat, and so I, at that point, decided that I wanted to bring the value of that one up, and so I completely went from one end to the other of the guitar, locking tuning keys, roller nut, just like these have, which I eventually had done to these Powerhouse Deluxes when I bought them long before you were born. But and then pickups, I had Fender Lace sensor pickups put on the Mexican Standard Strat. The American one, I actually liked the sound of those pickups, the stock ones. They sounded really good. And then I put mirrored pick guards on both those guitars. And then I changed the bridge on the Mexican Standard Strat with 2 graphite saddles. And then I got rid of the vintage saddles on the American 84 Standard Strat and replaced those with graphite saddles also. So they both, and I had to do some work on the neck with the Mexican. I had to sand down the fret ends and stuff like that and file off the edges of the frets. And then eventually, after all that, they both became pretty decent playing guitars, but you could still always feel just something a little different about that Mexican Standard Strat versus the American Standard Strat. Just, I don't know. They vibe differently for whatever reason. But, so.
Absolutely. So what's the point we're trying to make here? My first guitar that I've ever played. It's currently decommissioned at this moment. So you're wondering, okay, so why are you trying to make this point? I don't have the need to have that many guitars at the moment. This is an affinity level Squier Strat. And when I got it, the tuners were not the best. The pickups were just a little bit dull for my liking. I needed to replace the switch because it started to fail on me. But the neck is excellent, and it's beautiful. And the finish on this guitar is beautiful. The stock pickguard was black, so I changed that. But the bones of this guitar are excellent. Perfect to work with if you just want a nice guitar.
Modding platform.
A nice modding platform. That's the thing is you're going to buy a guitar at that price point. You're going to need to put some work into it. There's our dog right there. His name is Xerxes. You're going to need to put some work into it. And that's okay. Because I got it. How much did I get this thing for?
I want to say you got it for $129.
$129. So $129, and the pickups were dull. The tuners were.
That was part of one of the Fender starter
The tuners
packs.
were just a little bit sloppy, but the neck came in feeling amazing for a $129 guitar. That yes, it was used. I got this used. It's perfect for a platform. If you just want to put a little bit of TLC into your guitar. And so that's where the point of Fender making a level of guitar where now they're making them in Indonesia, which is where this Strat was made. It was made in Indonesia. Why does Fender feel the need to suddenly start making production in Indonesia if they're not wanting to compromise their level of value in their guitars? And what people have been reporting with these Indonesian level Strats from Fender that have the Fender on the headstock is you're going to have to put a little bit of care into them. Just like this guitar. Why would you spend $600 on a guitar that's on the same level as what I got with this when you could just pay leagues below that in terms of price and you get the same outcome? And even something that you might like a little bit more. Because those finishes you might not care for.
This is where you and I were earlier talking about the stubbornness of playing a Squier.
Yeah, people are stubborn.
For example, when I went to purchase my next Strat, I ended up coming up and buying one of these, which is the Squier Gold Edition
40th anniversary.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. 40th anniversary. And I'll tell you what, the quality of this, and I think these MSRP, this one, which is the gold one, and I actually changed out the hardware on it with chrome because I don't know, I don't like gold tuning keys and I don't like gold saddles. So, and ironically, this bridge and saddles are from that Squier. This guitar, as far as, and this one is exceptional, and it's probably worth the $599 MSRP, which I actually picked this guy up for $305 off of eBay. And the frets are perfect on this. It's got binding. It's got the block inlays. I really like that. The pickups on this sound amazing, and they're custom made by Fender pickup for this particular edition. And then the other one, which is the vintage
also 40th anniversary.
Thank you. And
so same timeline, just different editions.
And with these 40th anniversary ones, they actually went with a standard thickness body, whereas the Affinity Strat is a little bit thinner profile. Yeah. And then this came with the thin bridge block, and I went and bought a brass, or actually, that was attached to the bridge plate that came from that one. The brass block gave this guitar more weight, obviously. And so now, just in the way that, in the fit and finish on this thing is absolutely beautiful. And again, I got it for half the price. And then my other one, Also, fit and finish, beautiful. This one, the neck on it is very similar to that Powerhouse Deluxe Strat that I have. Both of these are actually loaded with the exact same pickups. I have heard that the pickups in the 40th Anniversary Gold Edition are a little bit different sounding than the ones that were put in the vintage 40th Anniversary. But when I got this vintage one, it came with hot rails in the bridge, and I ripped that out. And from eBay, I bought Gold Edition bridge pickup for this one. So they both have the same pickups in the bridge now. And they both sound great. They do sound a little bit different each just because of the woods. And I'm not a big tone wood guy. I could go either way. But this one I think has a different maybe wood than this one. And you can actually feel it just in the weight a little bit. But both of these fit and finish are every bit as good as the Powerhouse Deluxe. Fret finishing work and stuff like that. And to me, back in 2004 when I bought the Powerhouse Deluxe guitars, part of that fret finish work was that it literally rivaled the American fret finish work that I was feeling on the American Standard guitars. In fact, I was finding there were times where the American Standard ones, you would feel some burring sometimes up in the higher fret range, but definitely on the Maxi Standards, you were feeling burring. But this is, again, 2004, and at that time, the Squier guitars of the early 2000s were not that great. They were these horrible hardware. The wood was not the greatest. The pickups were awful.
It was subpar.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
very much. So they, and every company has, I guess, a pocket of time, especially if they've been around for a while, where whatever it was they were producing just didn't match up to other periods of the times that they were producing.
Well, I mean, think about what was happening in the 80s. A lot of metal, Metallica.
True.
Metallica's not playing Strats, They're playing Jacksons and whatnot. Charvels,
Deans.
Fender's starting to lose their grip at that point. They make a resurgence in the 90s and the 2000s, but that could lend to the subpar production in the 80s, just the music movement at that time.
Could be.
Hair metal is not really a single coil style of music per se.
No, it's usually
so,
humbucker.
You got to look at other factors outside of just the production. See, what's the current culture at that time? One thing I should add is just because I got this guitar for $125, roughly around that price range, the finish is beautiful. You get this thing under some light, and it's a really pretty shade of red. It's not one of those things where you're compromising like, yeah, it's going to play good once I get it set up, but it's going to look ugly. No, you buy the right one. You buy one that you like. It's going to look good.
Where was that one made again?
This one was made in Indonesia.
Indonesia? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
As was the 40th anniversary on both of my 40th anniversaries. And then, again, the Powerhouse Deluxe are a kind of a hybrid, I think, where, again, the wood finish was done in Corona, California, and then sent down to Mexico for paint, hardware assembly, and overall assemblage. And, again, that's more so in the bones because, I mean, you self-admitted, that you've pretty much replaced everything. I mean, even down to the nut. Didn't you put a new nut in?
I put a bone nut on it.
So he's put locking tuning keys, actually new string trees, a bone nut, and then pickups, pick guard, new switch, same volume potentiometers, though, the stock ones.
Correct.
So you've pretty much upgraded almost everything about that guitar.
And that is true. But that's because that's what it calls for.
At that price point.
At that price point, that's what that calls for. And if you're going to buy a $600 Indonesian-made Fender, and you're going to need to put similar care into it, because isn't that the deal with those?
A lot of people are reporting that, that they come with ceramic pickups, and so typically nowadays, the classic Fender chimey sound is derived from an Alnico pickup. So right there, I mean, that was one of the cost-cutting factors to get it at that $600 price point. So you're getting Fender, but you're getting a compromised Fender, in my opinion.
So the question being, why would you spend $600 on a guitar that you would need to set up? I have a Music Man Cutlass upstairs, which a Cutlass that was like Leo's second version of the Strat, just with Music Man on the headstock. I have not needed to do a single thing to that guitar.
Yep.
And that guitar MSRP is for $600, and
that's the difference.
That's the difference. But these Indonesian-made Strats are MSRPing for $600. I think even the Cutlass was produced in Indonesia.
Was it?
I believe it was.
But here's the thing, and then, but to come back to the argument then is that, but now after you've put the work into this guitar, giving it the same accoutrements that you have on the Music Man stock, you didn't have, so 120 in MSRP on this guitar a la carte. So again, I want to say I think this was pulled from a player's pack, a beginner's pack, that comes with an amp and a gig bag. But the Affinity guitar by itself, I think, was going for $149 or $199 by itself. So let's just go with $200 as easy MSRP to work with on the math here. And then your Music Man's at $600. That's a difference of $400 in that guitar, but it doesn't take $400 worth of materials or even labor. Even if you took this to somebody to do it, you would still, I think, come underneath the price difference. But if you know how to do the work on this stuff, which he and I both do work on our own guitars, because I mean it really is easy if you're just comfortable with working with files and tools and
you're competent. Really, what it is say you buy it brand new, $200, and then there's that $400 difference in
hardware
quality, just overall quality.
That too.
It was about $60 for these tuners. I want to say $13 for these string trees.
I don't remember, honestly.
$20 for a new block, and that's actually on the cheap side for a block. I got it from Music Lily. Blocks can get expensive.
Bridge block he's talking about.
The bridge block, because it's a tremolo system. The pickups were $30 for the set. Is that right? I believe it was $30. So that's over $100 right there.
And then the bone nut.
The bone nut, that was about,
wasn't it $8?
$10.
$10.
So you're up to about $150 there.
Okay.
So there's also the switch. I had to replace the switch. That's another $14. So that's
14?
Yeah. You're almost up to $170 at this point. And then you got to take tax into account. I'm not going to talk about the pick guard because that's purely preference cosmetic. You don't have to change the pick guard. Point being, you take those two numbers, 200, which is the MSRP, which again I didn't get that for, and the modifications, which shakes out to be about
just say 200 after
200. That's $400.
You're still coming in 200.
You're still coming in $200 shorter than if you were to get a Fender Indonesian made or the Music Man Cutlass, or
which
really
but hold on, but
many
the
other
difference
guitars.
there. You spend $600 on a Music Man Cutlass. It has the locking tuning keys. It has the better nut. It has the better pickups. It has. I personally think that the Music Man trem system is a little bit nicer than the Fender one. That's just it looks a little more heavy duty. But you don't have to do anything for $600. But a lot of people are saying that with the Fender standard Strat out of Indonesia for $599, most people have now. Again, I think that's because Fender's playing to the whole. It has the Fender name on the headstock, and that's where this harks back to Richard's comment about people being stubborn with buying Squiers, because there are some people that are name snobs when it comes to gear, and that's where I'm saying I don't care what it says. To me, this says Squier on the headstock. But after the little bit I've done to it, which I did put locking tuning keys, I am not a fan of the vintage tuning keys, even the open slotted ones where you can stick. I just don't like that, because this makes for, personally, I think better tuning stability and string changes, obviously, because all my Strats are locking tuning keys. But now that I've done that, the pickups, I didn't have to do anything. The saddles, I wanted better saddles. This came with the vintage. And it comes with bone nut. And I'm okay with the stock string tree. The switch is actually pretty good on this, the 40th anniversary. It's very on par with the replacement switch you got, which was way better than the stock one of that Affinity one.
Absolutely.
But I have no issues. I'm not a name snob. I guess I maybe was when I was younger, in my 20s, when I first started playing, because I had the Red American 84, the Lake Placid Blue looked just like this one, 94 MIM made in Mexico, that I ended up having to completely upgrade on. And then these two Powerhouse Deluxes. So these guitars play, again, everything that's been done to these guitars, in my opinion, absolutely puts it at the American Standard Strat level, if not a little bit further up, because you got locking tuning keys and a couple other things. But the stock pickups on those are good. The thing I didn't like about the Powerhouse Deluxe was they had this mid-range boost, a 12 dB mid-range boost that was locked in with the tone knob. And when you would turn the tone knob up, there would be one last little click when you got to the 10 number on the knob, and that would enact this preamp in the guitar. It was a little PC board with some transistors on it and whatnot, and it actually had to run on a 9-volt battery, and it would boost the mid-range so that, like, if you wanted to play solos, it would cause your mid-range to push out harder so you would cut through the mix, or even try to, I guess, emulate a humbucker sound a little bit. And I just never cared for it. I thought it was kind of gimmicky. I mean, I think any kind of push or anything should either come from a pedal or your pickups, just how they're wound and the type of magnet, and how you set your EQ. Putting a little PC board into the guitar and then having to put a 9-volt battery into it to drive the preamp to give you that, it didn't, The Powerhouse Deluxe, I think, only ran for maybe 6 or 7 years. They don't produce them anymore, because they just didn't sell that well. And the reason why I bought 2 of them was not because of that feature, but because of everything else about the guitars, the fit and finish, the paint. I mean, striking, beautiful yellow. They called it graffiti yellow.
So basically, the question is, if you had $600 and you wanted a guitar, what are you going to spend it on?
Are you going to spend it on a Squier?
Save yourself some money.
A high-end Squier, which now the CVs, which they call the Classic Vibes, that's almost like their bread and butter in a way. I've heard nothing bad about the Classic Vibe series from Squier, which are actually just probably a step below these as far as everything. Because again, this one here is actually the most expensive consumer produced. There might have been some older, like, limited run Squiers where they were made in Japan or something like that, and those were like super high end or something. But as far as
I can think of one example.
Okay,
yeah,
but nonetheless, from what I understand, $599 for this Squier, the 40th anniversary gold edition, was the most expensive Squier that they've made pretty much since they became a company or rebranded by Fender to be a company within Fender in the early 80s, I think. So I've got this one, and again, it competes with my Powerhouse Deluxe, which at those times, the Powerhouse Deluxes back in the 2004 were at the $599 price point. So that I like that price point. I don't know if I did own an American Standard Strat, but again, I had owned it in 94 and 95, and it was an 84, so it was 10 years old. I bought it used off of a Guitars and More out in Missouri, Arnold, Missouri. Miss you, Earl, man. Good guy. And it was a great guitar, and actually it's the one I smashed into 3 pieces on stage when I was playing a show one night and glued it back together, and it still sounded amazing. But I just don't know nowadays, because to get that same everything in that Standard Strat from the 80s, even though that was considered Fender's worst period, besides when right after CBS bought them, that's when they did a lot of cost cutting. Was right after, it was in the late 60s when CBS bought Fender from Leo, and they did a lot of cost cutting to the Fender Strats at that time, and then they came back up again through the 70s, and then they went back down in the 80s again, and then came in the 90s, and they came back up again a little bit as far as American stuff. So, long story short, though, I don't know if, for me personally, spending over $600 in a guitar is going to get you what you want ultimately. I think you find the guitar that you like, regardless of what the price point is, especially if you can ignore what it says right here on the end of this thing. If you can ignore that, or that doesn't bother you, just get yourself the guitar that you like the way it looks. Believe it or not, looks play a big part in playing guitar, because it has to grab your attention. And when you look at it, you have to have that, man, that thing looks awesome, And as soon as you do that, and if it's set up to play the way you want, and it sounds good and it plays good, you'll just end up wanting to play your guitar forever. That's
right. That's where my question is it really worth it to go Fender if it's a guitar that, yes, it's at the $600 price range, but it's poorly set up.
Or has stuff that you need to replace out the gate.
What's the point?
Yeah. What is the point?
It has the name on the headstock, but it's even printed in black.
And I swear, Richard and I were talking about this earlier. The necks on these look very similar. This one, the American, or the Powerhouse Deluxe, it's a little bit lighter in tone, but they both have a vintage tint to them. And if you look at the headstocks and everything about them, and just even like the way they feel, the cut, the shape, they're identical. They're identical. Not one is not thicker than the other, one is not wider than the other, and one is not more C-shaped or D-shaped than the other. They're literally identical. So
yeah.
So then, what we want to know is, what do you think? Do you want to leave your comment below?
Leave a comment. Tell
Are
us
you a
what
Squier
think.
guy? Are you a Fender guy? Would you want to buy the standard Strat and just leave it as stock, or did you want to buy it and upgrade it? Or are you a new player? And if you don't have a guitar and you're looking to buy your first one, which way do you want to go? Do you want to go Squier after what we've told you, or do you want to go Fender?
Tell us what you think. Tell us whether you agree or you disagree, or whether you're neutral on it. We don't care. Just leave a comment, Just give us your input. We'd love to hear your input. And a like would be much appreciated. And a subscribe. That would be very, very much appreciated.
Yeah, and share this with your guitar music friends. Yeah.
Let me know if you agree. And if you don't, then give me an example of why you don't agree. Please.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you.